this new episode of Lucky Last, and I'm very happy to share with you this new format as I decided to expand my interviews with men and women who had extraordinary journey. And extraordinary is the right word to describe Darryn Lyons' story and life. Darryn Lyons, if you don't know him yet, and I'm sure you heard the name before, ran one of the largest paparazzi agency in the world. He owned a nightclub. He even served as a mayor of Geelong. He has an incredible story. He was at the center of scandal. He was as well one of the biggest photographers in the world and captured fantastic shots that will define the pop culture and the history of the pop culture. So today, I would like to say thank you for coming, Darryn. I'm very happy to have you here. Et bienvenue à la maison. Darryn, I just read your book. I read it in 3 days. I was fascinated. It's fascinating, really interesting. What I got out of it is this little boy from Geelong who was really passionate about photography and decided to do something with his life and push his luck to see how far he could go. So there is this quick anecdote in the book where you left Australia with $500 and decided a new life in the UK. Your goal was to be on Fleet Street, where all the UK's newspaper agencies and newspapers were, and you finally got there.
Yeah, well, Fleet Street was the centre of the world, and I don't think prior to me there'd ever been an Australian that had made it on Fleet Street. And it is an incredible story when I think back to how it happened, but it's really funny. It was not necessarily a lifetime goal. It was just this brash young man that wanted to take on the world. So your description is absolutely correct, but how the universe and things just fell into place on my arrival in London with, experience of a local newspaper, the great old Geelong Advertiser at the time and Geelong News before that. As a young boy, I was running around my 5 acres, my parents' 5 acres in Leopold, just outside of Geelong and Wallington. Annoying every bird, every animal, every cow, every lamb, every spider web frosted up or whatever the case may be. I mean, I was obsessed. I was really obsessed. But I also, got that creative gene from my father, who was an architect. But he was quite rigid in his creativity. But my mother was incredibly creative as a baker, a cook, a seamstress. She had creative flair too. So I'm very lucky to have got those two flowing genes into one that turned out. And I remember when my book first came out and I was on 60 Minutes and all around the world, and the big Paparazzi series that was in 84 countries around the world. I remember my parents, and my mother sadly passed away last year and my father the year before. So it's very poignant, this piece, is that I remember distinctly they said to me, when we started to read, we both were in bed together reading the book, and they both looked at each other at an identical time and just laughed and said, "Where did he come from?" So it's a wonderful anecdote that I'll take to my grave, that even though they wouldn't have agreed with a lot that went on in that book, there's no question with my religious upbringing and their being devout Christians, that that's a wonderful, wonderful moment. I remember when my mother told me the story, she just threw her head back with laughter. Very similar to the famous picture I got in Geelong of the Queen throwing her head back, which went all around the world when I was competing with Fleet Street photographers at the time. So all the ladders at the end, and I snuck in and under a herd of sheep, and she saw me, and it's probably the most distinct picture of the Queen, who was always just quite rigid, but it was the first ever picture that went, and at the time it wasn't called viral, but it was on the front page of every newspaper around the world of the Queen, throwing her head back in laughter. And it was the first big colour front page. It was a full broadsheet, which was this big, and it was just my shot on the front. So yeah, great memories.
It's a beautiful story that you mentioned about your parents in their bed reading your book and laughing, because you mentioned in your book that they didn't want you to be a photographer initially.
No, it's a hilarious story. I came home after doing my first couple of weeks, it was like kind of work experience really, at the Geelong Addy, and it was during my school holidays. All I wanted to do was and this was at a very early age. This was probably at about 16, 17. And I really pushed my way in there very hard. I wasn't getting paid. No one, you just did it for the passion of it. And I came home and there was a very, very bad accident in South Geelong on the railway. And it was a decapitation, and there was this purple Jag. And I think the headline, I said to Mum at the time, I said, someone got decapitated on the 315. And there's this train had hit the car and there was his head rolling around on the ground. And I took the pictures home that night on the breakfast bar, and my mother just looked at me with complete grief and said,
I can imagine.
Can you not just be an architect like your father? I said, Mum, this is great. I was so excited. It's fantastic. I mean, it was news, and news and my job, it was every day was like a big Tats win or a big lotto win. It's very hard to describe the euphoria that I went to work every day getting a high, and it was a natural high on life and on work. And I guess the greatest gift that you could do is pass it on to the next generation, where we live in such a money-obsessed culture in society and materialistic culture, that the best piece, I think, of advice I could give to any young person in their life is, no matter what you do in life, do an occupation that you love. Because I look back at even my life since then, doing many other things in life as an entrepreneur, that adrenaline pump of being in the news and taking amazing pictures in the Paparazzi and Big Pictures and PapPix UK and being ultimately Mr. Paparazzi, the money comes when you are loving what you do every day. And it's positivity all round, and that's what the universe gives back.
Absolutely agree. And you said it as well. You said, I was the first one to pick up any jobs. I would have you put your hands up every time just to say, I take it.
Yeah. And another thing that's very, very important in this is advice to younger people and people that want to make it. I think I'm a great believer in the third door. It's not the obvious thing that you go in. You've got to go and get it. You've got to knock on the door that you don't think you can knock on. And that's how I have lived my life in many ways. If you've got to spend a year sitting out the front of Steven Spielberg's home if you want to get an actor's job in a movie, he won't pay you anything. He's notorious for not paying anyone anything. But the fact of the matter is, you're in a Spielberg film. I think it's very important the third door is something that you would not expect to go through to achieve what you want to do in your life and success for your life.
And I think this helped you along the way. If I can share this quick story as well, it's one of your first day in London, and you have this interview with News of the World. And it's your first interview, you don't expect anything, and in the lift, so you are in the lift, and then the lift opens, and who comes in? Rupert Murdoch, sorry.
Well, yeah.
And you talk to him.
I did talk to him.
You could have stayed back and just say nothing, but you talked to him. And do you think this changed the outcome of your interview?
Well, that's like the third door again. No question about it. I was sitting down at reception, waiting to be seen. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure the News of the World, which I think was on the third or fourth floor at Wapping, I didn't even think they really wanted to see me. And it's really funny because when I got up there and they started to go through my portfolio, they weren't that interested. In fact, they couldn't wait to see the back of me and give me options in local newspapers in Portsmouth and Liverpool and anywhere as far away from London as possible until that red phone, and it really was like out of a Superman movie, The Daily Planet. So I was down in reception, and Mr. Murdoch walked through with his entourage, which you would have thought he was president of the United States, because he had entourage, the black trench coats, the dark Ray-Bans, and the earpieces, even back in those days. And we all got into the lift, and I ran in after them with I had my suitcase and a portfolio which was bigger than me now. It was huge, right? Leather bound. He went in. I said, "Hello, Mr. Murdoch, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, good son, where are you going?" And honestly, the security guards didn't want me in the lift at all. And I pushed in. You know, I just went in there. I'm from Geelong. The first thing I did, I'm an Australian photographer, Mr. Murdoch. I actually was in your Dragon Boat team with your caricature on my T-shirt for the Geelong Advertiser literally last week. And so, you know, and this was after I'd gotten off the stage, got the train to Victoria Station, then walked to Wapping. And if anyone knows anywhere in London, when you've got a massive suitcase with your whole life in it and a portfolio that was heavier than my suitcase, and no money in my pocket, pretty much, it was the equivalent of about 150 quid. That was my life. That's all I had to my name. I left Australia with $500 via Los Angeles, and I spent a bit of money on camera gear, and that was kind of it. I was pretty much penniless. And going up in that lift, he was very, very, you know, he was great. You know, he wished me all the best, all the luck. I'm going through opening this suitcase. Can you imagine with 4 bodyguards around him, throwing out my undies, my socks, and everything in the elevator? And here I found the T-shirt, and he had a good old chuckle about it. And I just felt at the time that he kind of, you know, he would have known, like I would, this takes balls. This is great. And you know, this kid is so excited and he wants to make it. Anyway, cut a long story short, he went up to the top floor. I got out at the 3rd floor. He wished me all the best. And I went in, and first of all, the conversation unfolded where pretty much, "We've got nothing, mate. See you later." Then the red phone rang, and Frank Hart, who was the picture editor, went outside because his personal assistant, the deputy picture editor, kept banging. Just said,
"You have to take it."
Well, it's funny. Yeah. They had a white phone, a green phone, and a red phone.
Interesting, yeah.
So the red phone must have been, and I don't know this for a fact to this day.
Yes.
But the red phone, I would have thought, is the hotline to the boss or someone upstairs. I said, you know, or from the editor or whoever the case may be. So the issue was that rang, and it was really strange because I only just saw the back of him, and it was all he was doing was nodding, and literally the phone call didn't last very long. And he walked straight back in. He said, "Darryn, you're starting tomorrow. We've got you on a job. We think Windsor Davis," at this time, being gay was a big story, right? So we think Windsor Davis, who was a great British actor, is gay, and he's down in I think it was down on the south coast. I think it was Portsmouth. He was doing panto, and you've just got to wait there and get a snap of him coming out the stage door, and, you know, whether you've got to be in a tree or in a bin, we want that picture. And News of the World was, you know, the biggest selling newspaper in the world. 6 million copies on a Sunday that sold. The readership was something like 10 or 12 million, I think, at the time. Extraordinary newspaper, and had the big money. So it was the pinnacle. So you'd gone from probably the smallest local newspaper in the world to the biggest circulation paper in the world within 24 hours of getting off a plane, because that unfolded. Incredible story. And I was sent with the chief reporter, a guy called Brendan Bourne at the time. And I mean, you know, everyone in the newsroom would have, what the hell's going on here? This is a scene out of Jimmy Olsen and Superman, no question. Yeah, I'm Jimmy.
Yes, fascinating. And from there, you just like kept going, kept pushing, kept getting the right shot as well. You were actually very good at what you were doing. And as I said, you kept getting jobs because you were the first one to say, "I'm going." You were working 18, 20 hours a day.
Absolutely, and I worked incredibly hard. When I think back at the energy that I had then, it was extraordinary. Yeah, anything that came along. The other thing is I pretty much was probably one of the first freelancers to put all his money into a mobile phone at the time, which I think my first mobile phone at the time, which was the big bricks, was £2,500. Now back that'd be like today, 10 or 15,000, 20,000. So, you know, yeah, because everyone else was on bleepers, because I was, you know, I was very much favoured because so I invested in myself and technology, but yeah, I was a workaholic. There's no question, in fact, only up until recently, to be honest with you, as that workaholic, and that's more because governments make it impossible for any entrepreneur in Australia, particularly, to make any money. It's out of control. This country. It's the biggest business killer in the world is Australia, and the Australian government policies, both state and federal. Whereas in Britain, it was very entrepreneurial, and I'm very proud of it. A lot of people didn't like Margaret Thatcher, but I went to Downing Street. I met her on several occasions, and she was wonderful to me. She really liked me for some reason, being an Aussie, I think, with the attitude that I have. But it was a never say die attitude. I remember the editor at the time, Sir David English, probably Fleet Street's greatest editor of all time, said to me, "Send the Aussie, just remember what they did for us in Gallipoli." I remember that quote over the picture desk in the newsroom. You know, we can send this guy anywhere. Because he knew I would put my life on the line for the picture. And I'm telling you, for the Daily Mail, I did put my life on the line many times. I was kidnapped, played Russian roulette in the Bosnian Wars. I went through Sarajevo, I went through Romanian Revolution. I did the downfall pretty much of the Iron Curtain right across Europe, which I dressed up as a Kennings hire van put a red cross on it, put a load of cigarettes, sweets and medical supplies in the back, and off I was through Europe. And I was held up by a 6 or 7 year old kid with what I think was, in the old ways to describe it, a 303, and all he kept saying to me by the side of the road when he stood in the middle of the road with a gun pointing at me, "Bon bon, bon bon." And I thought that was boom, 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 I'm going to kill you.
Bon,
but
bon,
bon bon
is
for an Australian
candy.
kid, yes, it's candy. And so I went straight in and got all this candy, and and his parents were not far, both dead, in the front of their property, and his whole family were killed, shot, and murdered. And here's me with mortars flying around and gunshots everywhere. And I gave it, and it was funny. It was like this little boy sat down, put his gun by his side, started eating sweets in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
And here's me getting into the car, and it was like a checkpoint. And I went through some horrendous checkpoints.
Yes.
Lucky to be alive several times. I mean, talk about a kid from Geelong.
Yeah.
You know, the Geelong Cats, the most amazing football team in Australia. I've got to say, a cat has 9 lives. I think I've beaten that.
So I'm going to ask you a question about this, because at that time you said that you wanted to work for Magnum Agencies, this big war photo agency, but yet you went the other way. Is there a reason why?
Well, look, the Daily Mail gave me incredible opportunities, pretty much probably because of my attitude and success. I also had won... for an Australian, I don't think there's ever been an Australian in history that's won British Press Photographer of the Year, British News Photographer of the Year, sorry. And I won it first and second. And I'd won many awards for the Mail. And they gave me incredible assignments that I don't think the British really wanted to do them, to be honest with you. I don't know that for a fact, but they knew what they were going to get with me. They knew that they were going to get someone that never slept, and I think I went a week pretty much in Romania, which was extraordinary. That was an extraordinary, the downfall of Ceausescu, and then Bosnia as well. I didn't sleep for a week, more than a week, just living you just kept awake on adrenaline. It's funny how the body changes in times of fear. But yeah, it was. An extraordinary time. When I look back, I look at it as being blessed, but how I'm here today to share the story is also quite incredible as well.
It is, absolutely, and it's fascinating to hear them. So you went back after all. You got married. In the meantime, you changed newspaper, and then you work for Daily Mail. We didn't mention that because it started. Yes.
Yep.
And then you got a lot of job there, a lot of opportunities.
I did.
You grow considerably. You did an amazing job. You were covering many different things: sport, movies, music,
fashion all over the world. The Paris catwalks to New York to the Princess of Wales, the Royals. I was jack of all trades, master of none, I guess. Although being British News Photographer of the Year, I
Yes.
guess news was where I was at because of my attitude. But look, as a young lad starting, I think even back on the Geelong Advertiser, every day I went to work, I wanted the front and back page every day. So I was incredibly flexible, and I think that local newspaper background gave me, I could photograph kids in the street, I could go to the zoo and photograph animals. In fact, on my days off, if I ever had a day off, I'd go to the zoo and make freelance money by going to, to Whipsnade Zoo or whatever and getting cute animal pictures, because I knew the Sunday Mirror would buy it, I knew the Daily Mail would buy it, and if they didn't, the Express or the Sun or someone would. And I got some amazing pictures. It's funny, I'm an incredibly impatient person, but I had patience when it came to paparazzi because it was money. The dollar signs were big. I mean, it was an adrenaline pump in many ways. First of all, getting the shot was extraordinary. Then breaking the bank in terms of the extraordinary sums of money, up to $1 million, dollars, pounds, hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands, 10,000, 20 grand, how much is that worth? 40. You just think of a number and double it, and then they paid it, right? It was extraordinary times. And you've got to remember, this was all for a cost of a roll of film in your time, right? So the multiple, in terms of a business model, I don't think has been repeated. Probably been repeated now by Elon Musk, and Amazon. But I mean, your margins were super extraordinary if you put in the time and effort. And I always knew I would put in more time and effort than anyone else. And anyone that took me onto a job traveling the world knew that as well. And that's why, I was the master of getting more exclusives than anyone else and big pictures in my team when I built this enormous team of paparazzi through Britain and around the world. It was because we went to those extra lengths. And I gambled big cash on whether they had to get on a flight here, there, everywhere. I didn't care how I got them there. We did extraordinary things. I employed a lot of former SAS, a lot of former British military that knew how to dig in, for a month in a back garden and piss in a bag, right? And there wasn't Uber Eats in those days. So,
No, that's for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So it was incredible what we did. It was pioneering, and I think that's why history will remember that time, and why many people, Mr. Paparazzi is where I got the name, is where the whole celebrity game was born out of. To answer your original question about what made me stop doing that, awards didn't pay the mortgage.
Yes, I thought so.
Is the probably famous quote from the book, and it's so true. I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. I easily achieved that, and I did that through hard work, focus, and incredibly unique ideas. I had a Woolworths model to give groceries to everyone, but I had a Louis Vuitton price tag, which is probably the best way to describe it. And I saw an incredible, because there's only one or two guys doing it at the time, and then I took wholesale into luxury, and I was producing a luxury item, and it was costing me nothing to make.
And you pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I pissed off the biggest and the best in the world. Yeah, there's no question. But I also created a lot of the biggest and the best and most famous people in the world as friends, and I can count them as friends still today. So, I had great relationships, and I saved a lot of people's careers, And if I liked them, they were safe, and I would hide the pictures. If I didn't like them, I buried them.
So you were saying interesting things, and this is what you were talking about, like people were coming to see you to help them in their career as well, and try to, build up their career. So you were going to do different shots. You were going to do studio shot or studio in an island, just to look this person a bit more like fancy and a real celebrity. So you helped a lot of people, and this is a really interesting model that you used.
Yeah, and it was incredibly unique, which born, my company in London, which was big limousines, which we drove Jerry Halliwell all over the place, it'd take me to work and then go. So I built a limousine business, I built a yacht charter business on the back of it, where Mick Hucknall and Simply Red and all that, everyone was on the back of my boat. in the south of France. I had the beautiful Sunseeker, big Sunseeker. I had the private jet. I did big plane charters. So I was flying celebrities here, there, right into my front door to be photographed. And a lot of them knew it.
Yes.
And a lot of them wanted to donate their portion to charity. Most of them kept the money. So we were on pretty much a split with the celebrity. So the celebrity at the time, it was orchestrated paparazzi, which had never been done before. And they loved it because they had, through me, they had trust and control. And I think the one thing I did with the celebrities that they loved at the time, the ones I liked and the ones we built great relationships with, is that they could trust and they knew they were getting their money. And I built fantastic relationships with the world's most famous people. Even if Paris Hilton was coming to London, guess who'd get the call? I had the world's security really tapped in terms of famous bodyguards with famous people. Some even today would remain nameless. And also you would get tip-offs from people close to the Princess of Wales. You'd get tip-offs from people close to all of these people. And I had good relationships. I had a great relationship with Ken Wharf, Diana's bodyguard, and I love Ken to this day to bits. He was a master, he was class, and he knew the game. You play with me and I'll play with you. Here's the boundaries. There's the boundaries you can play in. You go over that boundary, you'll never I'll never speak to you again and you'll never get any access. So it was all, I guess, as Donald Trump would say, 50-50. It was all a deal. And you had to be a good deal maker, and I was a good deal maker. And also I think what helped me a lot in a British world, in a James Bond MI5 world, I really think being Australian helped me a lot because I was different, I was funny, and I was great in the room. People would laugh at me all the time and people would take the piss out of me. So I was a bit of the court jester of Fleet Street, to be honest with you. And the British loved, and the Australian-British rivalry to this day is as strong as anywhere in the world. But there's also love for each other, especially when it comes to cricket or rugby or whatever the case may be. So, and I think there's a lot of respect. Aussie and Brits have this incredible rapport because Australia obviously is a country that's been born out of the British people. So, and also Australians have this hard, nuggety determination that really impressed people like Margaret Thatcher. I know that respect was, and Sir David English, and people that I wouldn't have dreamed in my whole lifetime I was ever going to meet. And Margaret Thatcher on my engagement, sends me a letter, for Christ's sake. So incredible. And I also had incredible respect for these geniuses of their time.
So it helps you to build this strong network. And as you said, you got a lot of tipped off. You are actually the one who got the first photo of Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt. So this was a big thing at that time. Like, they were
huge.
Even today, it's still very huge. I think the whole world knew about this split up and how he, cheated on Jennifer.
I still think it's the paparazzi record of money paid for a picture of all time. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it was right up there anyway. Yeah, that was a fascinating story. I mean, I can't take a huge amount of credit for that. It was my chief photographer at the time, Martin Lever, who had an amazing security contact within the film set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And we knew that they were shagging. We knew they were bonking for Britain, right? And America and whoever else they could have sex with. So, we knew that the van that they were staying in was bouncing most of the day other than filming. And it was a very passionate, if you go back to the film, the passion, you can see that, what was going on there. But Jennifer Aniston didn't know. In fact, Jennifer Aniston found out from our pictures and the article in Vanity Fair, I'm pretty sure. But she was mortified. She was devastated. But yeah, she pretty much found out for us. But that was another thing of incredible network. And I'll be honest with you, that really came through Angelina Jolie. She
wanted it.
She wanted it out.
To get out.
Yeah, because he would have been you can understand the psyche in the background.
Of course.
Do I or don't I? Brad was loving the sex. Look how that turned out. I think they just settled their divorce last week
Yes.
after 8 years. That was incredible love-hate, the sexual chemistry. It's a funny story because my photographers, when we found out where they were, Brad Pitt flew in about 48 hours later in a little Cessna in the middle of Africa. She was already at this palatial safari park with nothing around other than lions and everything else that would eat you in a savannah. And my guys are close to a beach and they walked down to the beach. We literally had 3 minutes of pictures of them and their little boy. That was the massive global exclusive in the world. And then they went up and just had sex for days. They didn't come out of the compound. In fact, we overheard, we were in the bushes behind it, and they were having so much sex. The staff thought they were being attacked by lions and tigers. That's how graphic and how loud Brad and Ange were carrying on. They were like a couple of shagging lions. They were going nuts. There was that much grunting and growling. It's great. When I was told the story, it was extraordinary.
So,
unfortunately, we didn't get the pictures, or the photographers may have got the pictures and never told me, because we probably wouldn't have been able to. Well, we would have been able to sell them in those days because there were no privacy laws. But we desperately wanted the sex pictures because we'd seen the Jemima Khan, Imran Khan pictures that had been taken, which I don't think were ever published. And I had a load in the safe of people, famous people. I still have famous people using their bodies like an amusement park. I mean, I've got a lot of people having sex.
So,
you know,
that's probably the issue as well. The paparazzi are often criticized for invading privacy.
Yeah.
And you said in the book, we satisfy people craving for knowledge of the famous. We are the antidote of all the bullshit, a reality check, and bring honesty to the world of celebrity.
That's absolutely true, because we create these images of these perfect people and they're not. In fact, they're worse. And I think you'll see this year with the P. Diddy saga, you're going to see a lot of people come down. And I'm over history, over time, all the exposure, Jimmy Saviles of this world, all the horrendous things that have happened to children. I've got to be careful what I say on this because I can let myself go. But I know stuff that still isn't out there about mega musicians today, that I think that if it does come out, they'd be locked up and the key thrown away.
And they should. But these photos are not leaked, Like, we are more talking here of, like, privacy, the poor Jennifer Aniston finding out that she has been cheated on and stuff like that. Or maybe Britney Spears, do you remember when she was with a baby?
I've got them all. I've got the pussy out. I've got the whole lot with Britney Spears. Don't worry about that. And her husband at the time was a great buddy of mine, Kevin Federline, and we did a TV show in Australia together.
He's Australian, right?
No, he's American.
He's American, okay.
American, yeah. But he filmed here with me for a TV series for 3 months. We had a riot. It was hilarious. But Britney, I think all of us felt sorry for Britney at the time. But she was manipulated in some of the worst ways possible by her family and her management and the team around her. I mean, the products that these people have become. They're in a bubble. They live in a bubble and they're totally super controlled. So there's a breaking point. I've seen it. I've seen huge amounts of it over my career back then, where people were broken by people. Kids were broken by people to get their own end game. And the end game is fame and money, right? And these kids were incredibly unhappy. There's so many stories that we don't even know about. And everyone out there today listening to this, yes, pretty much all the conspiracy theories are true.
Yeah, okay.
In my eyes,
yes,
the conspiracy theories are true. I don't have to say too much more than that, but, people say, oh, that can't... I'm telling you, some of the shit that went on in my career by these worship people, by us as fools, putting them on this pedestal, some of the most grotesque, shocking humans that ever walked the planet, because they had the power... To do it and get away with it, no question. But then again, there's also, I can't stand when people throw around accusations of people without fact either. So I've seen celebrities go through horrendous situations where things haven't been true. So the media also, particularly these days, has a price to pay, where pretty much the media world we live in today, commercial media, is pretty much all lies. That's why people have switched off to it. I mean, recently in America, all their lives have been horrendously exposed. And that's very saddening for me, who was a kid that grew up in believing everything in the media and actually reported it all as truths.
Yes.
I lived in the great days of the media that, what we were doing was incredible. And it actually was a journey to inform the people. But, privacy, all this kind of... Once we were earning money like Premier League footballers and all the guys that worked for me at the time, we were getting up people's noses. That's why the establishment, the fame, and the politicians turned against it and stopped the paparazzi industry pretty much through laws, because none of them wanted to get caught.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But in Britney Spears' instance, do you think that when she was crying with her baby in this cafe, maybe some paparazzi should have the decency to say, okay, she's having a breakdown right now, we go?
Well, she invited the paparazzi to go in and live with her at that time. Just remember that. There was a photographer living in her house.
Okay, no.
So she wanted it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really difficult. It's hard to switch the tap on and then cooperate. Diana was a classic example. I switch the tap on when I want and switch it off when I don't want it.
And that's it for today. But don't worry, part 2 of this episode drops next week. Stay tuned to hear all the gossip, behind-the-scenes stories and insider insights that Darryn, Mr. Paparazzi, had to share. You won't want to miss it. See you next week. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Lucky Last. If you enjoyed today's conversation, remember to subscribe or follow me on your favorite podcast platform. And if you are more of a visual learner, you can catch the video version of this episode on my YouTube channel. Just search for Lucky Last and hit subscribe to never miss an episode. As always, your support means the world to me. So until next time, keep chasing your dreams and embracing those lucky last chances. See you soon!